Hello and welcome to Prospects for Pros, presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. I am your host, Nate Tice. Today, going to be going over an LSU blockbuster performance against Florida and a couple of players involved with that. Also breaking down some of the offensive skill positions, outside quarterback, outside the offensive line. Don't have Brandon Thorne here for the offensive line talk, but help me do that, to go over the receivers, running backs, and tight ends, give you a little bit of an update. As always, is Mr. Big Board himself, Dane Brugler. How you doing today, Dane?
I'm doing well. We're getting close to a holiday season here with Thanksgiving, and
Yes,
the air is a little colder. It's kind of great. I love this time of year. I get to middle November, so I imagine the air is not as cold there for you in Vegas, but here in Northeast Ohio, it certainly is.
we get the cold nighttime.
Okay.
So as soon as that sun goes down, it's like turning off the oven. But the sun is deceptively hot, not deceptively, where I live in a desert, we know that, but the sun still can get hot. So you'll be like, oh, it's 48 degrees in the morning. All right, I'm gonna go do something middle of the day. I'll have a sweatshirt, sweatpants on. And it's like, oh, it's only 63, but the sun just pops you. So you actually get a little bit
Right.
more sweat than you think. But yeah, we got a little crisp winters or here. You might get a little snow. It snowed the first time I moved here, or first year I
Oh,
lived here. So, which I was kind of like, really? I'm going to move to Vegas and it snows. I can't escape this. So it's kind of nice though. All the other weather
yeah.
is pretty nice here.
The sun is deceptively hot, like Tyreek Hill's deceptively fast, pretty much. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It was it was like when I moved here and it was like, oh, there's mountains around. Oh, Las Vegas Valley.
Yes,
Valley.
there you
That's
go.
right. Yes, yes. I
No,
know.
well, I said, speaking of Tyreek Hill, walked into the living room yesterday, and my son was watching Dolphins Broncos. I'm like, wait, they didn't play yesterday. What is going? He's
Yeah.
watching Red Zone from week 3, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I had a birthday party this day, so I didn't get to watch these games, so I'm just going through them. I was like, you're 8. What are you doing? Like, this is 2 months ago. I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done to my son? I've passed on my just diabolical genes, and I don't know if that's a good thing. So,
Just the stat obsession, highlight
oh
obsession. Oh yeah,
yes,
I know.
it
Oh
loves it.
yeah,
So that's
kindred
it's
spirit.
a, it's a cool and scary thing.
I know that type as someone that that was reading draft reports in 5th grade and watching the draft
Yep.
and doing all that stuff. So speaking of which, actually, let's talk some college prospects. We had this weekend, LSU went up for how many yards and how many explosive plays against Florida, and they feature several NFL prospects at their offensive skill position. So I don't know if you want to start with the receivers or the quarterback, the trigger man for that LSU offense, Dane, because they are all playing pretty well right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Jayden Daniels because he
Yeah.
deserves to be talked about more. I mean, he did things in that game Saturday night that no one's ever done before. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So, 350 yards, over 350 yards passing, over 200 yards rushing. He is a playmaker, and look, it's not an apples to apples comparison to Lamar Jackson, but that's a name that came up a few times talking to scouts because of the way defenses have to game plan for you when you
Mhm.
can be such a threat with your legs, but can also win from the pocket. He has gotten better and better as a passer. Being in the same scheme, the same
Mhm.
system 2 years in a row now is a big part of that. At Arizona State, he had that really nice freshman year, and then COVID happened, and then they changed schemes his 3rd year. It was the same coaching staff, but still, what they were doing, the scheme was different. What they asked him to do was different. Had his worst year that 3rd year. Then he transfers to LSU, did really well last year.
Yeah.
Showed some nice improvements, and then this year just taking another jump in what he did. And I mean, he made my top 50 a couple weeks ago, my updated top 50, and it just his draft projection feels a lot like Deshaun Watson's was coming out of Clemson, where it's
Oh,
like, okay, because remember, we weren't talking about him as Deshaun Watson as a slam dunk first round pick.
no, we
Like
were
we were
not.
talking about him, and I say we, I mean the collective we,
Yeah. Teams
NFL
too.
teams,
I was with
yeah,
the Raiders at the
exactly.
time. Yep.
All of us on the outside, everyone in the league, collectively we were talking about him as a top 50 guy, but maybe an early 2, maybe he gets in the first round. Like,
Yep.
weren't really sure exactly where Deshaun Watson was going to go, even though he had this tremendous resume. And then lo and behold, he ends up going 12 overall. And so that feels kind of the same way with Jayden Daniels, where he's really good and he's going to go somewhere in the top 50. It's just, I'm not sure where right now, this early in the process. Could maybe slip to the second round, could very easily sneak into the top 20. Nothing should surprise us, especially at this point. We're not even Thanksgiving yet. Nothing should surprise us this early about how early he could go, especially coming off a game like he had against Florida. And then I tweeted this and it went viral yesterday. The number of explosive plays is ridiculous. And most of it's with his arm.
Yeah.
As good as he is with his legs, he has 76 plays this year of over 20 yards or more. That's 19 more than number 2 on the list, which is Michael Penix. But of the 76, only 16. So it's 61 passing,
Yeah.
16 with his legs. So it's not like he's just using doing everything with his legs. Most of what he's doing is with his arm, and so
Yeah.
really impressive to watch. Obviously, the offense, the receivers play a big part of that. We'll talk more about those guys soon. But basically that's but the long way of saying Jayden Daniels deserves to be talked about more. And the more you watch him, the more you appreciate him, the more you appreciate what he's doing.
Yeah.
The offense as a whole, he understands what they're trying to do. He understands what the play call is trying to execute, and he is able to make it happen. And so there are still times where he maybe moves on from a read too quickly, or the accuracy is good, maybe not great, but it's good. So there's still room for plenty of improvement here. But what he has shown up to this point, hard not to be impressed.
Yeah. And it's a great reminder. Just this position's so hard just to play and to evaluate. And what you said about having continuity with the play caller, and
It's huge.
Kelly's Kelly, and people can joke about it, but it's like he runs some good offensive stuff like that. That's what he is known for. And now he has a trigger man that's willing to push the ball when it's needed. He can be selectively aggressive. And again, that's always going to be the number one thing I kind of like. And when I watch a guy, he's faster. I swear. He's faster than he used to be. I don't like he might not have gotten bigger, but he definitely has gotten stronger, or at least more athletic or more explosive. Something. There's been some training happening, because he's always been a fine mover, but it's like now he just gets to the edge. He outraces angles when he's running up the middle, and that's kind of
Those
like real
runs that he had against Florida
are legit.
Florida's a defense full of athletes. Okay,
Right.
He didn't do this against
Yeah.
Army or Grambling, a couple other teams they had in the LSU schedule this year. He's doing this against SEC defenses, and it's funny. His dad is a former college football player, played corner. So looking at him, that makes sense, right? That slender build, but also with the way he moves, the quick feet, and some of the speed, that acceleration that he has. Really impressive. And I think his dad wanted him to be a corner, but he always gravitated towards quarterback growing up. And the rest is kind of history. But I agree with you. Some type of training has helped him become a more explosive athlete.
Yeah, but I think you nailed it on the head. Is that when you had him in the top 50, I was like, okay. And now I've gotten to watch him a little bit more, and it's great. Again, better competition that you want to watch. It's just he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, even if he is chaotic. That makes sense. I've compared him to Johnny Knoxville, or like one of those types of quarterbacks. But as progressing from the pocket, very sound, like good eyes, great timing. Like he throws those. I mean, they run so many slot fades, but like just all the time that ball
He's
comes
so
out.
good at it too.
So good. Like
dropping the bucket. I mean, it's
and those are layered throws, and that's a very real throw. Lamar, you just compare Lamar's thrown to like 6 of those in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Like those are real NFL throws you have to make, or at least get 50-50 shot at those. Yes, he has some talented receivers, but I think he's just an excellent trigger man, and the traits outside of size, like he has enough traits that it's like, this is fine to kind of keep him up here. It's not just a production thing. It's like actually like he's a good athlete. So that overcomes some of the size stuff, weight wise. I think his arm strength would be above average to good, but I have no qualms with it because he makes every throw and he operates on time. So it's not a hindrance. Maybe some other guys and again, like he's athletic, he creates, but he operates on time and in structure. He can do both already. So he looks he looks how a 5th-year player should look. Like he looks like a senior operating an offense that he's been in. It's like, that's kind of refreshing to see sometimes in these college offenses. Like you don't get that a lot. So yeah, I'm all on board. I really like him. I kind of like where you have him slotted, and I kind of agree with that kind of look at him.
Yeah. And we've talked about quarterback 3 a lot, right?
Yep.
Eh, JJ McCarthy, and we should probably touch on JJ McCarthy coming
Yeah,
off the
sure.
Penn State game. We talked about it so much how important it was, and then the game
And then
plan
brush it
was,
aside.
yeah, okay, let's do 30 rushes in a row here.
Of
Um,
course. That's how it always
but
goes,
yeah,
man. Me and
I,
Robert, how many times we've broken down games? And it's just the complete opposite. It's like, all right, well, I
right,
wasn't expecting that game plan. They're coming out of bye. Sorry.
right. With Daniels, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and then two other things that really stood out to me just when studying his game. First is the release.
Yeah.
It is so quick and it gets out so
Consistent.
it is, it really is, and there's a rhythm to what he's doing.
Mhm.
But then two, his internal clock is a lot better. It's not like it's one read, okay, drop my eyes, and then I'm going to scramble and make something happen. He works the pocket,
Mhm.
and his feel for that internal clock about when the walls are closing in, he will stay tough in the pocket until the last possible moment. And so this is not a guy that wants to be a scrambler and
Yep.
necessarily and use his legs when he doesn't have to, but he can. And so it's nice that he wants to be a pass first player. That's how his mind works. And
Yeah.
so um, he is processing very quickly and making these split second decisions and making the right decisions. So very slithery in the pocket,
Mhm.
and can when there's a window, he will go make something happen. And did that over and over and over again on that Florida tape.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about. I mean, God, man, he makes some real throws. He's just a joy to watch.
Those
He's
is
just like there's a lot of fun quarterbacks right now. We've talked about it all year, but it's like he's just a really fun, and just because he has some of that chaos to him. But again, it's organized chaos, which I like.
And
Oh
really,
yeah,
really quick, let's just touch on quarterback 3 because, again, we've
yeah.
talked about this since the summer,
Oh,
with,
my
Drake
guy,
and
my one
Caleb.
that anointed just got benched, Tyler Van Dyke, and he's coming back because of an injury. He was
Yeah.
banged up. He had a back. Do you see all the injuries listed for him? It was like finger, back, hip, and one other thing, shoulder. So
Oh, that's it? Oh, okay.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, rub some dirt on it. Look, he's yeah, the quarterback 3 remains wide open, and
Right.
the guy that we thought had a chance to maybe put a really strong foot forward, JJ McCarthy going up against Penn
Yep.
State at Penn State. I mean, he was 7 of 8 to start the game, and then he didn't attempt a single. Well, he attempted one pass in the second quarter, and it was a PI, so officially didn't happen. But and I fought a lot of wars on Twitter on Saturday about hearing from people how they don't trust him.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they trusted him, if he was really a first round quarterback, they would have let him throw. What are we doing? Like, Penn State really couldn't stop what Michigan was doing on the ground.
No.
What's Penn State's strength? The pass rush. What do you do to negate it? Just hand the ball off to your two NFL running
100.
backs. And if Penn State's offense could get a first down and really threaten you at all, then we would have seen Michigan do something, but they didn't have to. Why
No.
would you possibly move away from your game
Make
plan
him
of just
stop it.
running the ball? Right. And they couldn't stop it. And yeah, I mean, it's not like Michigan, they had to punt a few times, sure. But when you have an offense on the other side like Penn State's that can't do anything, well, you're not scared about that. And anybody that's watched Michigan football over the last, I don't know, 60 years understands this is how they operate. Jim Harbaugh, when he became head coach, there's a run first team. So
Yes.
um, this is a total game plan thing. I mean, JJ McCarthy is averaging 25 pass attempts a game. He was a considered a Heisman favorite going into that game. You're telling me they all of a sudden they just don't trust him? I mean, he's having a
Right.
great year. So yeah, it's a lot of
It's
bad takes with they
unbelievable.
obviously don't trust him to throw the football.
It's one of those where beforehand we're like, "Oh, I can't wait to evaluate this game." So, all right, we'll just put a pin in it. We'll just go to the next one because there's gonna be, other opportunities to see him chucking the rock. That's why it's
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
season. It's not
No,
just the one
and
game.
it is frustrating as an evaluator.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
mean, you look, the Michigan coaches,
Like
their
what
job is
Fatzel
not
Zine.
to, yeah, there you go. The job of the Michigan coaches is not to showcase their top NFL prospects. For us, like
It's
that's
not
not their job. Their job is to win games, and
correct.
that's exactly what they did. But it does put a lot more on that Ohio State matchup coming up here in a week and a half.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't necessarily, like we know a lot about JJ McCarthy already, but if he plays really well, or say he doesn't play really well,
Yeah.
it's a lot will be made off of that performance. And then what happens if they do win? Obviously, the Big Ten championship game and the playoff. So yeah, JJ McCarthy, it still feels like a work in progress.
Yeah.
We're still learning about him.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers came back, in that Texas offense. He's obviously still someone worth talking about, but another guy that his evaluation feels incomplete. Um, who else
I
do
know
we talk about?
those guys
Quarterback
all
three.
feel like they just the needle sideways for me, and it felt like like Daniels was the one that's like the needle moved up as opposed to
Yeah.
those guys like, oh, I'm flopping all of them. It's like, no, those guys just just like we gotta
Yeah.
wait, and I
I,
felt
I,
like
would-
that's
I would
what Daniels.
throw Carson Beck in there too, Georgia.
Yeah.
I
Oh
think
my god, just keeps
I'm
getting better.
yeah, I'm glad I included him in my top 50 because he
I
is absolutely
yes,
deserved it. And he has played like a future NFL starter. So, we'll
yes,
see if he ultimately decides to go back to school. Wouldn't be surprised. He's young for a redshirt
yep.
junior.
You see the
And
pedigree with him like that,
yeah,
like
yeah.
you're really seeing it now. He throws some real deal like seams and like
Well,
benders and stuff,
he's
and
another guy that plays on time. He
yeah,
just the
that's what wins.
game as the game speeds up, he doesn't. His eyes don't speed up. He
Yep.
still plays under control, and that's so key. And obviously, they've got to, they beat Ole Miss with what they did on the ground. It's good to see Brock Bowers back. I'm sure we'll talk about him more here with this conversation. But
Mhm.
okay, just wanted to talk about quarterback three real quick. Just a kind of a quick update as we continue to. I mean, I don't want to say
Mhm.
Jayden Daniels is now the favorite to be quarterback three, but
No.
it's a much more
He's making the
possible
best case right
outcome.
now.
Yeah, it's a much more possible outcome than I think we gave credit
Absolutely.
earlier in the year. That's for sure.
I thought I was done with my evaluation with him. I'm not gonna like not really like obviously keep watching these guys, but I was like, okay, how much can he like keep improving or how much? And it's like a lot. It turns out he was already had a nice baseline. It turns out he can keep getting better. So
Yeah,
yeah, good on him.
yeah,
Let's talk.
but the
Sorry.
receivers that he
I was
has,
just gonna
right?
say, let's talk about his receivers.
Yeah,
Because another guy you gave a very high grade on your last big board, not only Malik Neighbors, who has had some pub even going into the season as kind
yeah.
of the battle after Marvin Harrison Jr., but Brian Thomas, the other LSU receiver, which yeah, I'm seeing what you see, Dane, and I went back and watched a few of his games, and he is right. Oh, he is so up my alley. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I want to hear you kind of rattle off these LSU receivers because they were both very fun.
Well, yeah, with Brian Thomas, I got a lot of questions after he was 24 in the top 50 a couple weeks ago, and does he really? He's a
He
top
might be too
25
low.
guy. Like, yeah, no, it's pretty simple. He's big, he's strong, he's long, and he can run. Like,
Yep.
let's not overthink it with Brian
Nope.
Thomas. Okay, this guy, he moves a lot quicker and faster than you would expect a guy that size
Yes.
to move. Watching him against Florida consistently win vertically, there are a couple throws that were actually a little bit behind him that if they were out in front, he scores the touchdown. My favorite play, he had a career high 150 receiving yards in that game against Florida. My favorite play was not one of those catches. It was the 85-yard touchdown run. And I have an LSU film room on the Athletic right now that you can go see this play that I'm talking about. There was an 85-yard touchdown run that Jayden Daniels had. It was a zone read, and with Brian Thomas, he's at the bottom of the screen. He doesn't know what's going on behind him. He's reading the corner. His job is to block the corner. All of a sudden, the corner starts taking off,
Yeah.
and he outraces him down the field, shows off that speed, finishes that block to really the finishing touch on that long touchdown run for Jayden Daniels. But it's just a great example of not only the speed that he's just simply outrunning this corner, but the want to, the competitiveness. And so it was a great. He had a pop pass touchdown that kind of put the game away for LSU. I mean, it was a great performance from Brian Thomas. As a route runner, he's still a work in
Yeah.
progress. There's still nuance to his game that he needs to develop. One thing that I think really important for him is just to learn to be more available as a receiver, getting his head turned around quicker,
Right.
adjusting to okay, I turn this way, but it's to my other shoulder. Okay, I need to adjust. Just being more available as a receiver
Probably
is something.
tied to that route running kind of what that's kind of goes
Exactly.
hand in hand. Yeah.
Right. And so it's he's a young receiver, so it's
Yep.
all things that he's gonna develop over time. But again, when you're 6'4" and you're consistently getting behind the defense because of your vertical speed,
Yep.
but you also have the competitiveness. And it shows as a blocker, shows in his routes. So big fan of Brian Thomas. And I think, we talk about quarterback three, we talk about wide receiver two. Wide receiver two there's a
Oh,
lot of names in that tier
yeah.
of who's going to be the second receiver drafted. And Brian Thomas brings something different than Malik Neighbors brings, that
Mhm.
Emeka Buka brings to the. So it just depends on what type of receiver you're looking for. But if both these receivers, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, end up being top 25 picks and two of the first five receivers drafted, that should not surprise anybody.
At all. No, I'm 100% with you. Thomas is I love both. I actually really like both of these receivers because one, what is so needed right now with receivers right now is explosive plays. How do you
Hmm.
create them? Can you either beat defenses over the top or can you create a little bit after the catch? And both of these guys can. Neighbors being more that Z, traditional almost Z vertical guy. I don't know how else to kind of describe it. Like, yeah, but he can catch some of those bubbles and tear up the field. But Thomas has more bend to him than I anticipated for such a big
Hmm.
framed guy. And usually when you think 6'4" vertical, okay, got it. Mike Williams, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what you picture in your head. He has more, yeah, bend when he has the ball in his hands. He can get the corner when he's like working outside, when he's trying to work to the sideline with the ball in his hands or on routes. So even though the route running, I'm with you. I think he's I'll put him around average-ish route runner at this point,
Yeah.
underneath
Work in
stuff.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that he has the traits and the ability, and like you said, competitiveness. You're kind of reading between the lines with it. That's like,
Hmm.
oh, but that can improve. It's not like where it's like, oh, he's stiff. It's not, Alec Pierce, where I'm like, oh, he's never going to be able to run a comeback route, like because
Right.
he just can't turn. Like he can turn. So I'm all aboard this one. Yeah, great shout out by you.
Well,
He
he's
is,
kind of like a less flashy Keon Coleman,
yeah,
like eh,
the coverage
Coleman's
was so
got these
twitchy.
ridiculous highlight plays,
Yeah.
but Thomas probably a little bit faster too.
Mhm.
Doesn't have some of the highlights, but he's still making big plays. That's for sure. And yeah, I 100% with the explosive plays. Nobody has more explosive plays as a receiver than Malik Neighbors this year,
Yeah.
and he had a few more against Florida. And he really showed off his yak. 70% of his yards, he had like 135 receiving yards. 70% of those came after the catch,
Yeah.
showing that ability to make a guy miss, to show that toughness and power through. So he is just such a glider.
Yeah.
He's not a big guy. He's going to be right around 6 foot, right around 200 pounds, but he's so controlled with his feet. He can win early. He can win late.
Yeah.
And he's reliable down the field, like the way he tracks the football. So he's got, I think, every single game he's got at least one catch of 20 plus yards, and of all of his receptions, 80% are going for touchdowns or first downs. That's anything over 70% is really,
Is
really good.
ridiculous.
He's
Yeah.
going over 80%. So this is a guy that led the SEC in catches last year. Might do it again this year. So Malik Neighbors, obviously he's just like these receivers are helping out the quarterback. Having a quarterback like Jayden Daniels helps out these receivers.
Yes.
But I mean, let's make no mistake about it. These guys are NFL guys, and Neighbors. uh, Keon Coleman was wide receiver 2 in my top 50. Malik Neighbors is right there. I mean,
Yeah.
no one should bat an eye if Malik Neighbors ends up being that second receiver drafted. He has that type of skill set, both with his ability to get open, with his ability to create after the catch. He's just dynamic.
Yeah.
Accelerate, decelerate on command. I mentioned with Thomas how he needs to become more available. That's where I think Neighbors really that's the difference between these two guys.
He
Neighbors is a
works
little
down.
further along. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he seems like he's just more available, getting open and then with the catch point skills. So I agree. He is a playmaking Z at the next level.
Yeah.
A little bit different than maybe some other Zs because I think there's more to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he can be a true playmaker, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Like, most of these you picture are just kind of those underneath zone beaters, like, those
Mhm.
5 to 10 yards. That's where they work, which are also very useful. But just
Right.
when you take a guy high, you kind of want, some juice. So you want some of
Yeah.
these guys to
I mean,
take it to the
Devontae
house.
Smith, kind of like
Yeah.
that, where
Yeah.
he's a Z, but a little bit more than that. Not
Yes.
just the
Could
yeah,
be an X in some worlds,
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I told you, yeah. I pictured it's to me, the Z is Nate Burleson, like, just because where I grew up. So, it's just but that 6 foot, 190 pound to 200-pound guy, that's a
yeah.
pretty good route runner, good against zone. But you had it in your updated big board. I believe you had 6 guys in your top 31, including Troy Franklin, I believe, or
Hmm.
is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, including Troy Franklin, I believe, in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
top 31. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I think all these guys are legitimate first round types. and some fun flavors. And like we've talked about a few times is, Marvin Harrison Jr., Neighbors, Thomas Odunze from Washington, Keon Coleman, obviously from Florida State, but Troy Franklin from Oregon is like some size. These are X's. These are vertical Z's. These are guys that actually are like can win one-on-ones and zone and take it to the house. So it's a really, really fun group. Are there any other guys that have maybe impressed you lately that maybe you haven't given a shout out before on the show other than our guy Ladd McConkey?
I was just saying, can I talk about Ladd again? Because
you sure can. I love talking about Ladd. He's another pleasure to watch.
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. He's again, size not going to impress you.
I know. I just talked about all these guys with size, and it's like, well, but here's the one that's like, I understand why to like this guy,
right? Well, and I was finishing my Brock Bowers report, scouting report last night, and so I was watching the Auburn tape, and McConkey had this one route where his ability to gear down, like he is pushing this route vertical, and then just on a dime. Controls himself and just breaks off a 90-degree route to the outside to the sideline, and it's just like the corner fell over. He was on the ground. That short area burst. He also has the long speed. Yeah, Ladd McConkey is the real deal, and he's got a real feel for how to run routes, how to they're just the spatial relationships between him and the coverage. When not to break too early, not too late. And when you have a quarterback that's on the same page, man, it is fun to watch. And so that's where McConkey and Beck are right now. I get it with McConkey. He's not the size is going to bother a lot of teams, but he can give you a lot. So yeah, definitely
one this class because he's the different flavor. It's like last year, like a Cedric Tillman is going to get a little bit of a boost because it's like, what other X's are we in draft? So it's like, in this class, it's like, okay, he's all right. We got kind of maybe the shifty underneath guy, like it actually has a little bit more juice. So, all right, I can see a team really loving him if they have some size,
So Xavier Worthy had a nice game. The size with him is going to be an issue as well because he's taller. He's probably be right around 6 foot, but he's 165 pounds. I mean, he is really, really small. But again, we've seen these guys, whether it's Tutu Atwell or Tank Dell, guys that the weight does not look impressive. We've seen these guys be playmakers at times in the NFL. So Worthy's going to be really interesting. A couple of these seniors, we've talked about Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky. The Debo comparisons are going to be all over with him. Really like Roman Wilson from Michigan. Obviously, didn't get a chance to see him do much against Penn State because they didn't throw the football. Xavier Leggett from South Carolina, another one who, he's
a lot of
big.
fans.
Yeah, he's 6'1", 220 pounds, and he's got speed. So this is a really good receiver class, and we'll see what other underclassmen come out. We just talked about the 10 that were in my top 50, but then you've got a few interesting guys. Our guy at North Carolina State, Walker, who just missed my top 50. I mean, he's probably going to come out. Him and Drake May had some nice connections in that win over Duke on Saturday night, which was a lot of fun to watch.
It was bonkers.
It really was. Moose Muhammad from Texas A&M, obviously NFL bloodlines, with the coaching staff and everything going on there. He might end up declaring. Big fan of Sturdivant at UCLA. That passing game.
Yeah, I was wondering what did you think about, an updated look, because I know you kind of were like, hey, he's interesting. He's very interesting in the preseason. So I was curious. If you have
planted my flag on him in the summer for sure, and he transferred over from Cal to UCLA, and I know the UCLA coaches love him. But the passing game at UCLA has not really been able to feature him as much as I think he deserves to be. So we haven't seen that, but still, that the talent is there. He can be a day 2 pick. So it's this is good to see Johnny Wilson back from Florida State too. When Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are both out there, it's just obviously a different FSU offense. In that Miami game.
Polk.
So
God, you just keep going on and on. What about I just had because I looked up his stats last week because I feel like he's just always just putting something up, or at least no, he didn't actually recently. But yeah, Torrey Holton from Colorado State. But I managed to watch him against UNLV, and I was like, oh, there he goes again. There's another. I believe you had more like a 3rd, 4th round type, so I just had to kind of check him out again. Now, going on to the other pass catchers, you mentioned that you just kind of wrote up Brock Bowers, or taking a look at him. Any other tight ends that have stood out to you outside of Brock Bowers? But I mean, we should just start with him. Obviously, I mean, he's good. We're
Yeah, yeah, it's
we can
pretty
move
good.
on.
It was good to see him back on the field.
It was. He's
It's funny,
competitive as hell,
those
man.
yeah, those tightrope ankle injuries or
Oh,
4 to 6 week injuries. He missed 2 games.
yeah.
Okay, it is funny. After the game, Kirby Smart, they asked him, like, did you talk to Brock about maybe sitting out and shutting it down? And Brock said he got calls from agents and other people
Oh,
saying, hey,
sure.
maybe take it easy. And Kirby said it pissed him off. Like he was like, oh, well, I'm coming back earlier now. Like he just wants to play, and so obviously it's like
Yeah.
catnip for NFL teams to
Oh,
hear stuff
yeah.
like that. They love that. And Bowers had a touchdown, and didn't have his normal explosive game
Yeah.
that but I mean, first game back still looked good, still looked fast. I mean, his ability to win with speed and physicality is it's awesome. The ball skills are great. After the catch, he's fantastic. He's just so unique and versatile. And I get again, we talked about before, you don't draft tight ends in the top 10 and blah, blah, blah. I get it. I totally get it. But if you have an offensive play caller who is dedicated to featuring this type of versatile talent, I would not hesitate to draft him in the top 10. But again, your offensive play caller has to be on board. He has to have a plan. He has to understand, like, okay, we can use him in the slot. We can use him as a wing. We can
Yes.
use him in line. But this is how we're going to use him. And it's funny watching that. Again, I was watching that Auburn tape specifically. The entire offense at Georgia goes through Brock Bowers. If
Oh,
he's
yeah.
not, if he's not the preferred read, he's a decoy route. And you can tell when he's the decoy route because he doesn't even turn his head. He's just running these routes down the field, and you see 3 defenders go towards him, and he doesn't even turn his head. He doesn't even look because he knows I'm clearing something out for Ladd. I'm clearing something out for these other guys. And so he is a true, true difference maker. Yeah, top 10 pick.
Yeah.
I'll be shocked if he's not a top 10 pick. Put it that way.
I would be too. Yeah, I think he's just so dynamic. He's a classic draft player, not position type of guy, and you're
Yeah.
drafting him because also how teams are switching around how they use tight ends blocking has really changed how I'm looking at F only tight ends
Mm-hmm.
and kind of more of those hybrid guys. Of course, Kincaid we've talked about with the Bills, but Laporta with the Lions, even Evan Ingram with the Jaguars.
Mm-hmm.
Just how teams are getting a little more creative and they're figuring out different ways to mitigate it or make it easier. And so it's really eased my one huge concern. Obviously, it's like, oh yeah, he's not a wide tight end, which is what you want to value more. But it's like he's such a dynamic receiving threat that I'm like, yeah, top 10. Like I'm fine with this because, like you said, he can run off routes because he's fast enough. So you can
Yes.
truly use him as a pass catcher, not just a tight end. So I'm all aboard on the Brock Bowers height. He's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll see what other underclassmen come out. We Ben Sinnott, Kansas State,
Yep.
he accepted his invitation to the Senior Bowl,
Saw
so
that.
we'll get a chance to see him there. He's, I mean, a fun player,
Yeah,
former walk on, who
useful.
6 sport player in high school, did a little bit of everything, and he's still just kind of underrated with the way he can impact the game. Yeah, very
Yeah,
useful. We'll see some of these other guys who comes out. It's just not a great tight end class outside of
yeah,
Bowers. Jatavion Sanders from Texas. We'll see, but he's a guy that didn't make my top 50. Still like Cade Stover a lot from Ohio State. I mean, he's
yep.
a guy both of us really like.
Mhm.
He missed a few games, banged up, and he still doesn't look 100% out there, but did a nice job against Michigan State Saturday night. I think he's still in that third, fourth round range.
Yeah, that's it.
I not a guy I really consider for the top 50. Again, if you're going to take a tight end in the top 50, he better be a Brock Bowers type
Yeah,
or a really good all around player. And Cade Stover is more of your Trey McBride, just that type of tight end who's a good player, but I don't think teams are going to value him as early as the top 50. So, and
yeah,
that's nothing against him. It's just that's the position value of the way he plays the position and his talent. So he's still going to be a guy that can be an NFL starter.
yeah.
Both Penn State tight ends I like, Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren. Bryson Nesbitt from North Carolina had a nice game. He had a
He did.
really nice catch late in the fourth quarter from Drake, that a touchdown. So good to see him make some plays. But yeah, this is a tight end class that outside of Bowers, it's hard to get really excited about.
It's going to be a tight end class where it's like, can't wait to see the testing. And then now,
Yeah.
okay, which guys should maybe peek out a little bit more? Okay, is there
And
something we
weight,
can
how
and
big
weight,
is he really? You know?
length? It's
Yeah, right, right.
yeah, like which makes sense for tight ends. It's just I think Bowers is the one that's like the easiest. You can see his role. Stover, special teams coaches are going to love him because
Yeah.
he'll just run fast and hit somebody. Yeah, he can go do that. But yeah, I'm with you. The tight end class, I'm waiting for kind of maybe another kind of why to step up to like really kind of latch onto. But like watching even like a Stover and then seeing the difference between him and like Ruckert from a few years ago.
Mhm,
It's like,
mhm.
okay, Ruckert I could project a little bit easier almost because it's
Right.
just that was a why. Like that was a guy in line. I could see the flashes of blocking, even if he wasn't always great. So that was it was an easier projection at least. But want to move on to the other somewhat disappointing offensive skill position into the running backs,
Yeah.
because that's another position that kind of seems like maybe a guy to wait out, but it seems more of a super role player heavy class. But
Mhm.
right now in November, what are your feelings about the running back class, Dane?
Well, none of these running backs made my top 50,
Mhm.
and it's I think I mentioned it on that show, but it's only happened once ever where we had a running back not go in the top 50 picks. So history says somebody's going to sneak in there, but especially now with this Jonathan Brooks
Brooks
injury,
injury. Yeah.
he's sidelined with the ACL. With that, okay, I think Brooks was trending towards being running back one or running back two in this
Yeah.
draft. He was going to go high among these running backs. Now with him sidelined with that injury, that it's another running back that's not going to go that early. So um, I, Trey Benson and well, to me, two guys, Trey Benson from Florida State
Mhm.
and then Travion Henderson from Ohio State. These two
Yeah.
guys are really, really talented. With Travion Henderson, I mean, he was a five-star guy, was the guy on campus as a freshman, but he's been so banged up, and it's really interesting with I mean how you factor in these injuries because he was banged up last year, and you could tell he missed several games earlier this year. You could tell, but when he's on the field. That Ohio State offense looks completely different. It
Yeah.
looks it makes a huge difference. So he's a big play waiting to happen. And Trey Benson, kind of the same thing. He had a nice touchdown against Miami where just at the line of scrimmage, lateral cuts, contact balance, and then speed does the rest. He has a lot of traits that say, okay, yeah, that'll work at the next level. And then even as catching the football,
Yeah.
both these guys, Henderson and Benson, they're very, very good, especially on like swing screens and wheels where they don't have to stop their momentum and they can just catch in stride and keep going and not slow down. They could be real weapons. So right now, I think Trey Benson and Travion Henderson are kind of the top two guys at the running back position. But it's I think that we're gonna have a lot of split opinions. Some
Yeah.
guys are gonna like the Michigan players, Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. Braylon Allen is still a part of this conversation, even though he's been banged up and hasn't
Yeah.
had the season many thought he would. But I mean, the thing with Braylon Allen too is he's 19 years old.
Right.
He's so young, and he'll be 20 in January. So his entire rookie year in the NFL, he'll be 20 years old.
It's just insane.
That's crazy. So there are running backs to like in this class there, but it's hard to find running backs that you truly love and say, "Oh yeah, I would take this guy in the top 50, not think twice about it." But it is a decent group of
Yeah.
talent based on these underclassmen coming out.
A lot of twos. Yeah, that's what kind of feels like, but useful. I
Yeah,
would, I would,
committee guys and
yep, third
guys that
down
can
backs.
be valuable. Sure, yeah. Did you have a favorite of this group?
I mean, Benson's kind of working his way up, just like because he's at least explosive and he has size, even if sometimes the
Hmm.
vision can come and go. I always think he has ways to mitigate that. So, like I okay. It's a sliding scale for me
Mm,
for vision. If you like, you can bounce out. Like James Cook is maybe a decent example. Sometimes he'll bounce stuff like a lot of fast guys do, but I think Benson also has size, which I actually
yeah,
really like. And you mentioned the pass catching, so it's like his role. It's like you can't kind of screw that up. I think no matter
right.
what, a team's going to find use for that. So he's kind of going that way. But like you said, these guys are all like late third, fourth rounders to me. like as opposed to like a guy that you're saying even top 50. It's like, oh man, even top 70, like top 80 is kind of getting a little dicey for some of these. Benson, I could see up there. Allen has size, which I'm always going to be fine with, and I think enough speed to be kind of a nice, efficient runner.
Hmm.
Maybe I think he's a little better than this, but maybe that AJ Dillon type role, where he's just size and getting those. He's the hammerhead, but he's got some finesse and nice feet to him a little bit. But yeah, the rest I'm just like, Bucky Irving. Okay, yeah, he's fun from Oregon, but it's how small he is. So
Right.
it's like, okay, just another guy. That's another role guy. Even Blake
Yeah, it's a
Corum.
complementary piece.
Another complimentary guy. I like it. I could
Yeah.
see his role in the NFL. But that to me is not an ace. That's not a guy you give 20 touches to. So it's very hard to anoint any of these guys. But I'm with you where I think it's Benson if I had to pick one, and then probably Allen for me too. And that's not just
Hmm.
because I'm a Wisconsin guy, but I can see his role in that having where he can get that 15 plus touches. That's justifiable if you take him like in the third.
Yeah, and I think with Allen, he's a guy that I mean, teams were recruiting him as a linebacker.
Yeah,
I mean, he was a safety in high school that thought, okay, he's going to grow into a linebacker role in
he
college,
was a
and
monster in high school.
yeah, oh yeah, and it kind of just did running back, and I think as the more and more as he is committed to the position at Wisconsin, we really saw it last year with the way he produced, and then this year again he's been banged up and some fumbling issues too.
Yeah.
But man, when he's right, it does look good. So yeah, I think that and throw Audric Estime in there too from Notre
Yeah.
Dame.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think they were all in a similar tier where between picks 70 and 120. Like these are running backs that you can understand. Okay, we drop him in with the guys we already have on our depth chart, and all of a sudden we feel better about this group. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's a good group. It's just I don't think any of these guys you're necessarily pounding the table for and saying, okay, yeah, we need to get this guy early. Which again, we usually have one or two of these guys, whether it's Bijan and
Right.
Jameer Gibbs last year or the year before, even with Kenneth Walker and Brees Hall, both those
Yep.
guys, neither went first round, but they went pretty early in the second round. So, it just doesn't feel like that type of year where we're going to have somebody go super early. And you can understand why with this group, even though it's still a good group.
Yeah. Right. Useful. I'm just going to
Yeah,
keep using the word. Any
yeah.
thoughts on Devin Neal from Kansas? I'm just curious about him. I think
What'd you think?
he's another fourth round type to me, fourth, fifth round type, but it's just
Okay.
like, I don't know. I like him. I just think he has some three down potential because I think he has hands and they use him. The Kansas offense is a lot of fun to watch. But also just like, I don't know. He does a lot of things well, checks a lot of
Yeah.
boxes for me, has size, pretty decent balance, decent vision, good enough vision where I could see him in a zone scheme and actually be okay in it, and enough athleticism. So I don't know. He's one I'm kind of like, I like, but again, like you said, like, but don't love. And I just was curious if you had any thoughts on him.
Well, I'm not. We'll see if he'll be in this draft or not.
Right.
But
That's the other thing.
yeah, because I don't know. When we talk about running backs, obviously underclassmen, it's always different because most of these guys are going to come out, whether it's Will Shipley at Clemson or
When they don't, you're like, why didn't you come out?
right, right.
Why
So
not?
he's one that I didn't expect to come out, but yeah, if he did, I mean, I get it because I think he could be. He's a
Yeah.
draftable player, but he's one of those names that it's good to talk about because you add him to the mix, and it's like okay, another one we got to slot in here, figure out okay, because it's not a great senior group of running backs either.
Right.
Like Blake Corum's a top senior, obviously, and then my second senior is South Dakota State,
Oh,
Isaiah Davis. Who
yeah.
he's a good player. He's 230 pounds.
Yeah.
He is a no nonsense type of runner, but he's a good athlete too. My favorite day three running back this year, well, I've got two of them. They're both in the SEC. Ray Davis from Kentucky, one of the
Yeah.
best stories in college football. And then Josh Williams from LSU, another LSU skill player,
Yep.
had some big blocks in that game against Florida. One was the Jayden Daniels long touchdown. He got down the field, took out a corner, and then the other one was that pass touchdown to Brian Thomas. He had a huge block that really sprung that. So this is a senior class of running backs that's not great, but there's a few of them that really stand out as like Josh Williams, former walk on. Like you don't see that at LSU very often, but he's a
Right.
good player. There's nothing game breaking about him. but you add him to the mix and you feel good about what he brings to your running back room, what he brings value wise, any situation. So yeah, these are guys that there might not be a single Pro Bowler in this group, but some valuable players.
Yeah. Someone that's going to save your fantasy season in a year or two. And they're just like, oh, got that guy for $1 or someone.
Right.
I'm glad he gave South Dakota State a shout out because I really love their offense.
Oh yeah.
Zach Lujan, his offensive coordinator's name is a young guy, but last year when I watched them, watching our guy
Tucker Kraft. Yeah.
I really like the offense, and the quarterback was actually pretty fun. So so that's one I'm always like keeping an eye out on the Jackrabbits from time to time. But no, that was great, Dane. You want anything you're watching this weekend that we just wrap up with, or just a typical slate of every prospect possible?
Yeah, I mean, look, put it this way: let's savor college football because we got 2 weeks left of the regular season, and so let's savor the
game's already clinched. It's like, come on.
It's crazy, yeah.
I hated that. It's like, oh.
Well, and we got a bit with Ohio State, Michigan. That's going to be huge, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
But it's important not to overlook this week, and that kind of thing with Ohio State's or Michigan's got Maryland. Ohio State's got Minnesota. So it's like, okay, let's take care of business. Then we can really focus on that next opponent. But with the game in Ann Arbor, I think obviously Michigan will be favored. It's just a matter of how much. And so that's going to be really interesting to watch. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit about that game next week.
I think so too. But again, you guys can hear Prospects of Pros or watch it on YouTube if you're into that as well. Every Wednesday on the Athletic Football Show feed. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you to Dane as always. I'll see you guys next time.